and welcome to this episode of Season 3 of the Dr. Tech Show, where myself, Pauline Roche, and Sweyn and often guests talk about digital topics, including the world of online communications and digital inclusion, in a show which was the brainchild of the digital storyteller, the late John Popham. So as usual, we go to our weather reports. So our guest today is Bobi Robson. Bobi, how are you? Where are you? And how's the weather there?
Hey, I'm in North Kent. It's a little bit cloudy, really cold, really cold. I think the frost may have just stopped now, but yeah, it was really cold at 8 o'clock this morning when I did the 2-mile walk back from the garage dropping my car off.
Oh, that sounds painful. Yeah, nothing permanent. I hope it's just a general maintenance.
Oh no, it's
check.
just the annual MOT. Fun.
Okay,
Hopefully.
absolutely. So Sweyn, you're further north. How are you? What's the weather like there?
Yes, I'm in Kirkwall in Orkney, and the weather is quite nice. It's calm, which is quite unusual, and it's overcast, but it's bright, about as good as you could hope for in January. We've had lots of snow and other things on other days, but today's quite nice and mild.
Cool. And here in Birmingham, I have some blue sky. I keep looking out the window when I do this, but I do look out the window. It's blue sky, and I haven't been out yet, so I assume it's cold. We have had snow ourselves in Birmingham last week. Surprisingly, it just seemed like a mystery. You know why it should be, I don't know, but there you go. But none today, and hopefully it's reassuring me that it's the forecast is dry. You know, low temperatures but dry. Okay, so before we proceed with Bobi, and we're delighted to have her on the show again. We didn't realize it was 2 years and more since we had her on, so we're delighted to catch up with all that she's been doing. But let's cover some of the dates that we've noticed. Sweyn, do you want to lead off?
Okay, well, the first one that we have featuring today is, of course, Chinese or New Year, which got going on Saturday night, but properly on Sunday, and I have some information about it very close to hand. It's also known as Spring Festival in modern day China, and it's the turn of the traditional lunisolar Chinese calendar. So as I say, it began in earnest yesterday on the 22nd and runs for 15 or 16 days until the festival of to the Lantern Festival. This is, of course, the year of the rabbit, so I'm not sure what that means for us all, but that's a fact. The festival is centuries old and gains significance because of several myths and customs. It was traditionally a time to honor deities as well as ancestors, and it's celebrated in all countries really where there's any sort of Chinese population at all. It's considered a major holiday in China and has had influence on the Lunar New Year celebrations of many of its neighbors. Lots of customs and traditions, often a New Year's Eve special dinner that would have been Saturday this year, and a bit like in Scotland, the tradition at Hogmanay is to clean your house from top to bottom. They also have that tradition in China for their New Year. Decorations, gifts, all sorts of things happen on Chinese New Year, and so Happy New Year to everybody observing that this year.
Yes, I was delighted to join the Lunar New Year celebrations yesterday in Birmingham with my friend Kate and Grace, who I didn't happen to see, Grace and Dom, but greetings to them, and Gina, my colleague, all of whom were celebrating in their various ways. It was very cold in Birmingham, but there was lots of dancing, singing, performances. It was really nice to be there, and the first time in 3 years they've been able to be back on the street. So yeah, very enjoyable celebrations.
Good. So the second thing that I found to mention today is Burns Night, which happens, I think, on Wednesday. It's the 25th anyway, and it commemorates the life and work of the bard or poet Robert Burns, who was born in Scotland on January the 25th, 1759. The day also celebrates Burns' contribution to Scottish culture, and his best known work, of course, is Auld Lang Syne. It's traditional to have a Burns supper on or around Burns night. They can be as formal as you like. They can be very stuffy and formal, but they almost always include haggis, bagpipes, and Scotch whiskey. So how could you possibly go wrong with that trio? It's not haute cuisine. It's kind of good old traditional food. And many universities, sporting clubs, there are dedicated Burns clubs dating back to the 19th century, some of them. And in fact, it's a day that's probably celebrated a bit more than St Andrew's Day, which is the 30th of November, which is Scotland's patron saint's day. So it's a bit like a Scottish Saint's Day, but then again, Robert Burns was by no means a saint. But there we are.
And again, celebrated wherever Scottish people are.
Indeed.
Around the world. Friends of mine, Liz and our late partner Neil, they invited me to one of their celebrations one year, and I'm looking forward to at least making contact with Liz again for this year's celebration. So
our haggis is in the fridge waiting for one night this week. We'll probably won't have whiskey. It's midweek, but you never know.
I understand you can get like vegan and vegetarian haggis as well if you want it. So it's inclusive.
I haven't actually tried it. I must try it sometimes, but apparently it's one of the foodstuffs where the vegetarian or vegan option is a good one. It's a good substitute apparently.
Nice to know.
Yeah.
Okay, and we've got a couple of events happening both on the same day this year, actually, one of which Bobi's involved in. On Thursday is Discover Your Digital Strategy, Building Blocks for Digital Strategy 1, one of 3, I think, sessions that Bobi's helping to run with SCVO, the Scottish Council for Voluntary Organisations, to help charities with the building blocks of the digital strategy. So I'm looking forward to hearing a bit more about that when we talk to Bobi. And the second one on the same day, Thursday, is from the Digital Poverty Alliance, our friends of ours, called Stop Reinventing the Wheel, a new way forward for digital inclusion. And the aim is to knit the existing ecosystem of providers together. As we know, 1 in 5 people and almost 1/5 of people and almost 1 in 3 children in the UK are now living in poverty, and over half of the UK is eligible for universal credit. So this is a session with Matthew Adam, the CEO of We Are Digital, and Elizabeth Anderson, the COO at the Digital Poverty Alliance, to discuss adopting a new approach to digital inclusion and We Are Digital's aim to knit the existing ecosystem of providers together for the first time. So that sounds like something we'll be definitely keeping an eye on. I'm going to be attending that session, and looking forward to being with others who are working on this important work. Great. So without further ado, we come to our special guest today, Bobi Robson. Bobi was last with us in September 2020. Bobi is a digital specialist working with charities across the UK. She helps organisations to make the most of technology, simplifying their processes and improving their digital offers to become more focused on their beneficiaries and support income generation. She works mostly with charities in the UK to help improve their digital offer, and this includes delivering practical technical improvements to developing on to developing new digital products and strategies. And we have a quote from Bobi's LinkedIn. Bobi delivered a webinar on how habits can build resilience for us. Bobi gave practical insights into making habits stick and reducing the overwhelm often felt by charity professionals. I would recommend Bobi for providing insights into practically adopting digital habits in processes. So very welcome to the show again, Bobi. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Great. I know we had a chat last week. I joined one of your sessions, a briefing session for the new program that's coming up. So it's been 2 years. What's been happening? Can you give us some highlights before we delve into things?
It's been a while, so I had to watch the last session back just to remind myself of where I was and what I was doing. And I think I just tested the course that actually I was talking about last week. So there's been quite a lot of adjustments to it since then. So one, I've got better at describing what it is. So the kind of main crux of the issue that we're trying to resolve is that many people that are kind of staff or volunteers in non-profits, so that can be charities or social enterprises, don't really understand what digital means. And if they understand what digital is and the opportunities, they don't quite understand how make the most of them.
Yeah.
So our new course is designed to give you the core skills, and it's called Core Skills to Be More Digital, to put all of the digital activities into practice. So it's kind of loosely influenced by the Charity Digital Code of Practice, which speaks to being person-led or user-led, making sure that you speak to people to make sure you're doing the right and making the right changes, being kind of strategic and making evidence-based decisions. And there's a lot of content on the course about inclusion and accessibility and ethics as well, because I think that's where, after us having to go so quickly in 2020 to get online and shift the way that we delivered things, we're now able to take a step back and kind of look and make sure that we're doing things in ways that are not only safe but are the best examples of doing that.
Fantastic. And what interests have you had so far in your course?
So we did the intro session last Wednesday, and we had 17 people signed up for the intro session. There was about half of that showed up, but free lunchtime YouTube. You know what it's like. So we've now sent out essentially a deposit link that will be live for the next week. And with that, basically everyone that pays their deposit gets to set the date that it starts and agree that. So if the majority of people who set their deposit want Monday nights at 6 o'clock, then we can do that. Or we can do, I mean, I prefer not to, but if that works for everyone else, we can. Or if it's Friday lunchtimes, we'll set that, and then from there we'll kind of invite others that want a little bit more clarity on things to join. So yeah, that's kind of where we're at the moment.
Sounds great. I mean, I co-led a session at a UK Gov camp on Saturday, which was really good, on senior leadership and digital, because like you say, a lot of people in charity don't get digital, they know what they feel they know what it is, but they don't really get the breadth and the perspective and the possibilities, potential of it. So I think it's good to be explaining what it's all about. And my session was very well attended, over 20 people, and these are all like colleagues from government and NHS and so on. So it's not just us, which is nice to be reminded that it's not just charities. So yeah, so you're working with a couple of colleagues now. I think they were on the call last week.
Yeah. So I've got two brilliant women, Alia and Sue, who I just started working with Sue actually when I first came on 2 years ago. And Sue's a social media and content background. She used to work at the BBC. And actually during lockdown, I worked in a large union to bridge the financial gap that COVID left lots of us. And I didn't have time to just maintain our presence. So I brought Sue on just to help with that. And then I think it was September, probably 2021, that I met Alia, and she joined one of our workshops, actually. She joined our impact measurement for communicators workshop. And when you just meet someone and you just know.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, with both Sue and Alia, there's just there's been that kind of spark where you're like, actually, we can collectively create something really special. And Be More Digital has never been mine. I didn't ever want it to be mine. I'm definitely the reluctant founder.
Great. Well, it's great to have partners to work on. And I definitely know what you mean about the person, because Sweyn and I worked together, like we don't think we ever met each other in person, but kind of John invited people to step forward and we did, and it's been very harmonious. So it's great to get somebody who's on the same wavelength and who complements your skill set, I think, very well. So that's really good. So you've had 2 years of kind of developing the program from when you first came on the show previously. What have you learned over that time? What's been the kind of the interesting things you've been able to take on board?
I think one of the kind of main things is ways to develop an offer, especially a training offer, in a lean way. So taking that lean startup mentality of making sure that people want what you're delivering. So one approach that we've taken is we have a bespoke offer, so people can approach us and say, I need training on Trello, was a recent one. So we have a kind of conversation about that, work out if Trello really is their problem. And in that instance it wasn't. They needed a project management training and then ultimately a kind of system that would help them with their specific ways of working. So we've developed a bespoke system for them using Airtable, which will be, now Airtable have adjusted their pricing structure, should be free for them to use as well, which is really, really good.
Excellent.
And then we'll be doing some training on the system, but also that kind of how to manage priorities, workflow management training as well. But from there, what we will have is a lot of assets and a lot of things that people can use themselves, or we can use and adapt. So the webinar that you mentioned on kind of forming habits, that started off as a bespoke request, and now that's one that we offer as a pay what you can workshop. So charities that are kind of those micro charities that might only be able to invest £1 in an hour and a half of their time, they can. So we just try and kind of have that lean approach, but really make a difference and make that kind of investment that an organization that might have some budget or has a real problem that they need to solve, and see how that impact can grow and be accelerated.
And you're generously sharing your resources on your website as well. I saw the Airtable one when I was looking on the website this morning. So that's really kind of you and speaks directly to the need. And I think, will solve a pain point for more than one person, which is really good. The kind of things that we talked about when you were last on was that you were involved with a charity, then a criminal justice-based charity, and you talked about developing the icons for your website, and there were a couple of the Q&A, the digital Q&A. Is that still happening?
Yes and no. So we won the Catalyst digital candle was kind of the same thing.
That occurred to me,
So I thought, well, rather than putting effort into promoting that, why don't we just share the candle and then share, rather than just my knowledge, give access to those other volunteers. I think I read recently that was 500 digital specialists that are now marked as volunteers, which is an incredible amount of brains that the rest of the sector has access to. So that the digital Q&A I kind of pulled back on, because as you're building a social enterprise and a new offer, you tend to start with about 20 different things that you're going to do, and you just need to pull back and focus where you can make the real impact. So I guess that's one of the big learnings as well.
And are you finding, how are people finding out about you now? Where's your best platform?
So that's a question that I'm trying to solve still, and I think we'll always be solving. But on our recent user research session we ran last Thursday, I think the next one's in April. Sue joined, and it was the first time that she joined the workshop, so she used the opportunity to explore what she'd been doing on social media and how that had made an impact. And planning other tests and other bits of research to find out what we could do more of. But one thing we have noticed is just kind of shifting where we're putting our workshops has probably made quite a difference. So we were listed on a site called Lunar, which I really liked, but didn't have the reach. And now we've gone back to Eventbrite. They have made some changes so that it's slightly easier to use and slightly more user friendly on an organizer's point of view. So yeah, we've gone back there, and I think that's probably made a bit of a difference. But yeah, we're kind of 2023 is learning from the last 2.5-3 years, working out what has worked, and how to grow on it. But predominantly the people find out about us through other people telling them. And so yeah, the traditional word of mouth is definitely strong.
Yeah, always good. You mentioned something there. Oh, user research. Yeah, I know it's a term that kind of we might be familiar with, but for those who aren't, can you just give us a kind of basic explanation for somebody who knows nothing about it as such, as a topic?
Yeah, sure. So user research is a process to find out how people behave with either your website or your service, and it doesn't have to be a digital thing that you're testing. And essentially it's a framework through which you can speak to people and find out what influences their behavior. So the workshop that we had on Thursday is about planning your user research. So it starts off with working out what questions you need to answer, and then looking at how you might answer those in slightly less direct places, because user research comes with an acknowledgement that even when we don't want to lie, we lie as people. We always want to portray our best versions of ourselves. So when you're asking people to would you book onto something, they're likely to say yes. But what you need to do is probably ask them to do that and record it, so then you can see if there's any frictions there, if there's any like, oh, how do I do this? I was just paying my tax, and on the direct debit, HMRC said I needed a K number, and about 5 pages before they'd given it me, but they hadn't put it in emboldened. So I my neurodivergent self just skipped past it. But if it had been emboldened, maybe I'd have paid more attention to it. So user research enables you to see those things and make things better and more easy to use for people.
So for small charities who, how do you encourage them, or how do you enable them to see the relevance of this? Because I can see the relevance straight away, like websites and stuff. But how do you think they could use it every day that would make a difference to them?
So I was recently working with an organisation actually up closer to you, Sweyn, in Glasgow, and they're a public building, or used to be a public building. And one of the questions that they had was, why do people walking on the street not know about us? And so we did this knowledge board exercise where we broke down what we know, what we think we know, and what we're not sure we know. And from there, what we realised was the front door had been painted the same colour and hasn't had any signage for the last 20 years. So the charity has only been in that building for about 15 years, but there's that living memory that this is a closed building. It's not open and it's not accessible. So then we were looking at ways that we could affordably test that. So, getting a clipboard from Amazon and putting it on the front door to show that there's something there, does that make an adjustment? And this charity had a community cafe, which was it was a kind of social enterprise charity. It was one of their business main income streams as well. And if people aren't coming through the door, you've got a problem.
Yep.
So yeah, that's probably quite a good example of how user research and just taking that time to step back. And I think a lot of us in the sector are running just to keep still. And sometimes we just need to give ourselves that permission to maybe ignore that email and spend 15-20 minutes with people that we work with or someone else, just to think around things that they've been struggling with for a while.
Yeah. I can see that, and lots of things about color and visibility and logos and stuff like that. Like we're developing a logo for the project I'm working on now for digital NNS, and it's, you know, we've given an extensive brief to the designer because we need to convey so much, and a logo does convey so much. And I mean, back to your logo and stuff, you developed your little suite of characters. I think it's fantastic. You know, it's so unique. It's so it really, you know it's you straight away when you see them. Are you still putting time into that, or are you kind of, is that done and developed now?
So we're about to have another look at the way that we visually represent ourselves. You know, it was initially kind of the colours and the characters and all of that, they were just spun up in response to a need. And I was looking at kind of the journey that we've been on, and there's definitely a kind of identity-ish, but it is not throughout. So we're doing some work to look at who we are, what we do, how we do it, and if that is reflected in not only the imagery that we use and the fonts that we use and the icons and the different illustrations, but also how we speak about what we do. And that's really important as well. I think that's definitely shifted over the last 2 years to be more about kind of enabling and just understand. I think basically in the last 2 years I've developed a bit more of an understanding of those people, you know, the people that have been working in the sector for a really long time, or might be looking to move into the sector and want to understand those digital skills and their fears. You know, the big thing is when you're investing in digital skills, it is an investment, whether that be one of time or money or both. So making sure that people understand what the value is really important.
And what resources do you think are the best besides your own? What do you think, where do you point people towards to kind of gain that sort of mindset and knowledge?
I think it really depends on where they are to begin with. So some things that I really like and have kind of seen develop over the last 2 years is you've got lots of resources from CAS and the Catalyst, which are kind of handbooks. But they are very detailed. So if you're already feeling a bit overwhelmed about digital, that's probably not the first place to go. I would say in that instance, it's probably a good idea to go via the digital candle, and just have, and you can repeat, you know.
Yeah.
You can go and say, you know, how do I use Facebook groups? And have a conversation with an expert, and then the next week you can go, how do I use Twitter? It's there, it's accessible and it's free, and you can keep using it, because that's what, you know, the experts that have signed up want to help and want to make a difference. And you know, we're donating half an hour to 45 minutes of our time quite often, so you know, there's lots, and every question can be answered that way.
That's great. And Sweyn has it on screen at the moment. So it's very low barrier to entry there. You just have to type in the question that you want to ask, and then they match you up with somebody who can answer the question. I don't know. I think I've registered. I can't remember if I have now. I haven't been asked. But I mean, there's so many people. It's great to have 500 people who are willing to share their great knowledge with other people. And obviously the people who are on it are they've been vetted at some level to kind of know that they're not going to blind people with science, that they're, you know, or baffle them with bullshit, as the rest of that sentence goes. But they are going to try and help them, you know, get to. So have you had some queries on there that you can share with us?
Yeah, I've had a few. There was one that stands out is it was from an NGO who supports other kind of grassroots organisations, and their kind of key need was they were really struggling with social media, but because they were concerned about the risks around it, in terms of the work that they were doing. They had to protect a lot of people, and so we just had kind of it was an understanding of how Facebook worked, because they thought they were having a group and actually they had a page. So quite often it's working out, stripping that back to make sure you're talking about the right thing. But when we broke it down, it wasn't a digital problem. It was a comms problem, really. It was are you talking in enough clarity about what you do and why you do it? And do you have a crisis plan for if someone doesn't like what you do? Which you would have if you were doing any analog communications.
Yeah, that sounds really good. I like saying that sometimes it's not a digital problem, that it's not a technology problem. This is what it comes down to, kind of define how we're defining digital. Again at UK GovCamp at the weekend, in the session I ran, there were lots of useful kind of leads on getting. We were talking about senior leadership, but anybody really who's working in a charity that has some decision-making scope needs to know that there's a possibility that digital might help, or technology might help with the issue that they're struggling with, and it's where to start. And I think sometimes even with Digital Candle, knowing it's there, formulating the question, because like we get people at all levels who are trying to increase their productivity, trying to cope with volunteers, trying to, maximize their income, trying to make sure the income they do have goes far enough that they're budgeting properly for the upcoming, eventualities, the cost of living crisis and everything. Everybody's struggling, and like we're all saying digital can help you with that, but sometimes the gap between the problem and the digital solution is the one that's so difficult to kind of get kind of bridge. So it's why it's great there's someone like you who's worked in organizations at a senior level, who are trying to break it down to kind of manageable steps for people. So what's in you're doing your course now is six different sessions. What things are you covering in those sessions?
Yeah, so the 6-week course is breaks it down, but it also shows that they're connected. So if you're taking kind of financial decisions, or decisions on whether to move ahead on a project, what evidence do you need to help you make those decisions? And actually that's not really a digital thing. It's just stepping back and breaking it down. And what we look at and cover in the session is how can you take conversations with people to add to that evidence. So if you're making a decision on, do we run a new project or do we expand this project into a new area, physical area, or shift it into a different service area, there are kind of two things that you need to look at. You need to look at, can we afford to do it? And if we can't, how much more money do we need? So you need to have access to that information and evidence and data. And then you also need to work out on a people level, are there already people doing it? If so, what have they learned? So just having conversations. And also, where are the people? If you want to move from one parish or area of like physical location to another, are the problems that are in your original location actually in this separate place? And what we do across the course is we spend quite a lot of time looking at iteration. So how can you make small changes or ask small questions in order to help you answer the bigger question? So my bigger question is, how do we make everyone confident with digital ways of working and digital approaches in the sector? You can't. There's no way you can solve that problem and solve that question with one solution or in one go. It's got lots of different minds working on it, testing lots of different things. We are all kind of talking together and communicating. But my approach right now is if we look at the foundations, then we can potentially improve the outcomes over time. And that's what we're looking at. So I'm taking an iterative approach to improving the baseline skills. So just giving people the permission and the confidence to take those tiny steps, to have explorations with other people, but also the knowledge of how to do that safely and not take advantage of the people you're talking to. Importantly, not take advantage of the staff and volunteers that are in your team, and how you can use these kind of 6 pillars of digital ways of working and put them to practical use. And the course is designed to be able to help you with a problem that you might have at the time, but also start you to kind of think about how this might be transferable to your project planning, but maybe also your behind the scenes activities. So it might be you have 12 different spreadsheets that don't talk to each other and you work that out. So that then becomes a problem that you want to solve. How can you do that slowly and well?
It sounds a bit like the ergonomics of digital. How do we proceed from a not being digital, or seeing yourself as not being digital, to being digital? And it's not a straight line, is it? You go up and down, you can drop out certain blocks, you can decide to navigate to a different section of the flowchart or whatever. But I think it's good to kind of have that in your mind. You mentioned the 6 pillars. Is that something that you developed?
No, so Digital Code got 6 or 7. I always talk about 6 pillars, but I think the Digital Code might have 7.
Okay.
And so mine are being user-led, data-driven decisions, iteration or an iterative approach. And then we look at the kind of the ones that are all affected by that. So you've got the ethics and risk management, because that's a big thing, and that can be actually quite a blocker and a barrier to people doing more with digital, because they don't understand the risks, or they think the risks are greater than they are. So they freeze. So that's one of the weeks that we look at is kind of looking at how we manage those risks, and then the kind of the final bit is about our mindset and our growth mindset, because it is all about our approach and how we can be comfortable in a non-linear world, and how we can kind of make that safe and feel okay. And that's developed more from my recent ADHD diagnosis. I've realized that for all of my life I've been creating coping mechanisms for my squiggly world, and actually a lot of them, as soon as I discovered kind of core digital ways of working, like agile methodologies, I was like, oh, there's rules, there's like a framework that I can keep safe in to do all of my experiments and play around. So it's about kind of creating that sandbox space where you can give yourself permission to be creative and have fun.
And again, a word that maybe some people listening aren't familiar with, agile. Can you explain agile to people?
So agile is a word that is regularly quite misunderstood and misrepresented, especially in the charity space. So there was definitely a trend early 2010 to talk about agility, and often that was taken as breaking things fast and trying to fix them. But Agile is really an approach that I was talking to earlier, where you can take it iteratively. So you want to look at the larger problem, and then you break that down. So creating small problem statements, they're called, towards that larger problem. So if you've got a big system where you need to manage 5 different services and they all need to connect to one individual, you need to understand that as a whole, but you also need to break down the problems that are within those services. And are there any problems that are shared across those services? And you can see that. So it's an approach that allows you to explore and experiment and make tests that are less costly than trying to create a full thing, launching it and realizing it's wrong.
That's a great explanation. I like that. Yes. Yes. I mean, I've been obviously at various seminars on it and stuff like that, but that's really good. You know, the first seminar I went on, it was explain the difference, you know, from moving from a skateboard to a car. You know, how complicated does the piece of equipment need to be before it does what you want it to do. So yeah.
And it's definitely about practice, and the more you practice, the better you become. You know, 2 years ago, I would have been breaking down problems to what I would now probably turn into 6 different problems, and kind of the more you do it, it's like anything, you know, the more you do it, the more you learn. And you can, what I find concerns people about gaining digital skills is, because it is so big, they might get a bit disconcerted if they can't do it right straight away. And actually it is a journey. I'm still on a journey. You know, I watched myself earlier and said to my husband, I was so naive. There is so many things that I've learned in that 2 years. I wouldn't be able to quantify them, but you know, because I've been experimenting and I've been putting myself in positions of slight discomfort, sometimes more so than others, but within those kind of barriers of safety.
Well, if you feel inclined to write a blog post about how you've moved in the last 2 years from, you know, when you were first in Dr. Tech Show, when you are now, I'm sure I'd be fascinated to read it anyway. And I can see some of the developments, you know, because we've kept in touch. But I think, you know, coming back to kind of the original premise for this show was about helping people to learn about what it's like to be online and improve and you know, have opportunities to try things out. I think you're a great example of somebody who's offering that to people on a daily basis. I know that you said you've gone back to Eventbrite and you're offering, I think I've got the link in the grid, Sweyn, to Bobi's courses on Eventbrite. And we will obviously put it on the notes after the show. Of those, I don't know whether you're able to bring it up on screen, Sweyn. We could just have a quick look at them. But are you wanting people to attend all 6 courses, Bobi? Is that the idea, that they sign up for the whole package?
The ones on Eventbrite at the moment are our kind of monthly calendar.
Okay.
Pay what you can.
I see. Okay.
So they're the ones that are kind of have initially been commissioned by other people. That we've slightly adjusted to make them friendly for people that don't come from the same organization. So the planning your user research one that we did last week and have rescheduled for April, that was initially commissioned by Third Sector Lab for one of their clients. And now we run that as often as we can. Working Well Together is one that was initially created for a refugee organisation and the communications team there, because they were really struggling to manage their workflow. And what we do with the tickets is you've got there, it says £38.32. They were all marked as pay what you can 100%, but recently what we found is a lot of people working for for-profit organisations were taking advantage and were paying £1 or no, then we let it happen. So what we've done is we've adjusted the offer so that you can get tickets at what we feel is the right price, which is £35 plus the Eventbrite fee. And then you could also put a donation. You could choose a donation offer, which can be anything from £1. And then we take the Eventbrite fee. But that means that, you know, we want to make it as accessible and inclusive as possible. So, you know, when I was working for tiny charities, quite often, even actually when I worked for a £16 million charity, there was no budget for me to train. So I was always paying for it myself. And, you know, if you're paying for your own personal development, you can't afford to spend £35 on a 90-minute session once a month. And we've got the same approach with the core skills course. So if you're a tiny charity, unfortunately we can't do the pay what you can offer for that, but we've set the cost at £250, which with the coaching and the other support that you get through the course works out at about £2 an hour. So where we can, we make it as affordable and as inclusive and accessible as possible. And then, you know, if you can and you have the budget, it's £500 or £750, and they're the different prices, just so, you know, if you can afford the 750, you can supplement the smaller organizations.
That's great. That's really good to hear. I think, you know, just looking at the explanation on the Eventbrite for that course that we just set up on screen, it's clear that it's, you know, going to reach people that kind of might have been a bit scared of, you know, what you know, coming to a product, you know, productivity, you know, if you call it something more kind of digital or techie, it might scare people off. So it's obviously very accessible and welcoming for people. What kind of numbers do you get at each of your courses? Do you cap the numbers that you have on screen?
So the numbers are capped at 20 for each session. We average around about 10 to 15. But I mean, 20 is a nice enough number so that people feel like they're part of something, but it's not, you don't get as many people hiding in the corner as you would if you go for a higher number.
Yeah. Sweyn is currently doing an MSc, I think, and are you learning online or are you learning face-to-face, Sweyn? I can't remember.
It's mostly face-to-face, but there's always the option to do bits online, and there are some people who are taking part entirely online, so it's a complete mixture.
Yeah. And what's your number? What numbers do you get in your groups, Sweyn?
Oh, it depends. I mean, there's maybe 7 or 8 in one group and 30 odd in another group. It's just all it's very hard to say for sure.
Yeah.
It's very hard to know who all the online students are, because some of them are in the wrong time zone to ever attend live, so are constantly working through recordings plus tutorials in their own time zone, which we're not involved in. So
right,
quite interesting.
Yeah, I started a course with Future Learn where you you know, you did it at different time zones and you could comment, and it never worked for me to have the separation. You know, I need to be on screen at the very least with people, if not in the same room. I much prefer being face to face, I have to say. But you know, yeah, I need to be in the same. So yeah. So are you getting people from different time zones, Bobi, or is it all people in the UK?
Not so much. The Trello charity, they're from South Africa. So they're the same time zone, but a while away. We have done some work with organizations in America. And you know, most of our workshops at the moment aren't in that right time zone. So most of the Pay What You Can workshops are at 10 a.m. Which is obviously not great for cross-globe actions. But I mean, we're going to do a bit of research, but I'm not keen on setting lunch and learns, because I believe that if you want to learn and you're doing it to improve your working practices, then you know that should be part of your working day, and not an add-on, if possible. So you know, it's not something we're very good at in the UK. is making sure that that's part of our working day, especially not in the third sector. So yeah, it's, if I can, I try and make it working day times, but you know,
it doesn't always. Yeah, but we'll go for that, because we do want to encourage people, the well-being of people using digital. We're going to cover some of the other stories we picked up, but before we kind of finish with you, Bobi, what, looking forward, it's 2023 now. A lot has changed in the last 3 years, obviously, with digital, and things have developed that we never thought could and would. I think some people are kind of going back to wanting to be less on screen, certainly, anyway, whether it's less digital, I don't know. What are your kind of looking forward for this year, next year, maybe? What do you see coming that we need to be mindful of and thinking about?
I hope that people are better at setting boundaries and learn how to work off and outside of meetings. That's a really bad habit that we developed in 2020, was everything had to be on a meeting or in a meeting. So people are really struggling to get their work done in their working time because they're in meetings all the time. So I would hope that a lot of people start to reconsider what they're doing in those meeting times and what they could do around that. So using technology to work on shared documents. But with that comes a need to be really, really clear on expectations. When you say to someone, can you create a document for me, or can you look at this? What do you want them to look at specifically? Why is it important? And when do you expect them to do that by? So yeah, I hope that's the next thing that we look at.
Yeah. Well, you've built ethics and risk management into your kind of what you're looking at. So I think it sounds like good practice from a technology point of view, and not forgetting things anyway, but also just well-being, as you say. It's all too easy to be on screen all day and in kind of meetings, as you say, multitasking possibly as well, because people do that, as we know. We've done it ourselves. So yeah, good digital practice. I think that sounds like a really good thing to aspire for while we're teaching people to use technology, that we teach them in ways that are good for their mental and physical health, and good for the environment as well, as we are conscious of.
And lessons from our mistakes.
Yeah. Okay, so we picked up a few. If you stay on with this, Bobi, you can comment on some of the stories you picked up. Let me just go to the grid. Just a few things that we kind of noticed in the last week or so. And in Scotland, there is a technology grant that I've become aware of. For young people aged 16 to 25 who have a disability, they can apply for free tablets or laptops from Independent Living Foundation Scotland. So if you have a disability or impairment and live in Scotland, you can apply for what's called a technology grant. It's a new initiative designed to help combat digital isolation for young people, and applicants can pick one of 3 pieces of technology to help get online. And they are a 10.2-inch Apple iPad tablet computer, or a Microsoft Surface Go 3 tablet with keyboard and stylus, or an HP Chromebook laptop. Interesting, because whenever I talk about tablets to people, I always say to them, there are other. They start with iPads. I say other tablets are available, but obviously people think that Apple is, and it is, a very good piece of kit. So just looking at those 3, Bobi and Sweyn, what do you think about why they've offered those 3?
I mean, for me, it's quite. So the Chromebook is obviously Google's product, and they're all relatively similar kind of technology items, but for young people it may be that they're expected to work in Microsoft applications, so then like a Surface might be better for them to use. Out of the 3, I'm definitely more of a Chromebook and a Surface person, because I always find that the Macs and the iPads are quite different in terms of the way that you navigate around them, and as an entry level device and kind of just knowing how people learn, it's probably best if you try and keep it looking the same.
What about you, Sweyn? Have you got any preferences among those three?
My personal preference is for just an old-fashioned traditional laptop, but so I guess I would probably go more for the Surface of the Chromebook as well, just from that point of view, because they would be more recognizably that. I don't know. It so much depends. I think we can get quite caught up in which is better and which is worse. The fact is that any of those three things are better than not having one, and each of them will have their own limitations and things that they'll not facilitate as easily as some of the others. So I think it's just, particularly when you're starting out, it's just you pays your money and takes your choice, really.
I wonder how they.
Although I do agree, but I would put Apple. I would put the iPad kind of last on the list. But if someone's going to give you that instead of giving you nothing, then it's going to be good.
I just wonder how people get decide what to choose if they've got no previous knowledge. I mean, obviously most people have now, but if they've got no previous knowledge, how do we decide whether they could exchange if it didn't work out for them?
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see whether anyone's done any work about assessing from an initial contact with a potential client.
Yeah.
How to go through the decision-making process if the person who's going to get the technology doesn't really know much about it yet. There's bound to be ways that you can go through an initial interview or a questionnaire or something to actually come up with based on what they think they want to do. But then just because they think they want to do stuff when you ask them before they start, that's not what they're going to end up. I mean, it's never works like that, does it? It's all the things that you want to do, you discover along the way. So I don't know.
And I think it's also about the accessibility needs of the individual as well. The Apple products do tend to have more accessibility. Siri is quite a lot better as a virtual assistant on a device than it's called Cortana on Windows, isn't it? And I mean, the Google virtual assistant is quite good, but I've got a friend who is visually impaired, and they have been visually impaired since they were 18, and they're now 50, and they've got their first iPhone. And they chose the iPhone because of the accessibility offer and that ability, but they spent the first month constantly going back to the Apple store to get someone to help him unlock it or something like that, because all of this accessibility stuff is added in, but if you're not shown how to use it properly, he couldn't open the device because he had the screen reader on and then was trying to type in the numbers for his passcode, but when you've got the verbalizing screen reader on, it doesn't let you, it locks the screen. But without having that knowledge, I couldn't help him. So I was like, I'm just gonna have to drive you to the Apple store again.
Well, this is a classic example of bad user research or on Apple's part. So yeah. We just got time, I think, to squeeze in one more, the second story there, which is about some London councils are creating a digital gap for older residents. And this is a story from ukauthority.com. Apparently, Age UK London has warned that large numbers of older people are at risk of losing financial support due to local authorities' increasing emphasis on online services. And they published a report, Access Denied, Accessing Council Services Without the Internet, based on a series of freedom of information requests and a mystery shopping exercise, and highlighted that a third of London boroughs do not offer a way of applying for housing benefit or council tax reductions without using the internet. Amongst other findings are that 25% of councils do not offer offline access to blue badge applications, disabled parking badges, that is, and 17% do not offer any online access to council tax rebates, council tax reductions, housing benefit, and blue badge applications. So it sounds like we need to get onto our pals in the councils in London and say, you're leaving people out there, and I think it will come down to projects like mine and others around the country to say that, you know, you're just letting people down if you're not making this available. And we do say on this program often that although we promote digital inclusion, you know, we promote digital, we're saying the inclusion part needs not to be forgotten. And even if you're not online, it's not an excuse for you know, not ignoring the needs of people who aren't online. Okay. I'm sorry we have actually run out of time, but Bobi, thanks a million for joining us again. We won't let it be 2 years before you're on the show again, please God. Please tell people how they can get in touch with you if they want to after the show.
So you can find me on Twitter at _BeMoreDigital or _Bobi Robson. Our website is bemore.digital, and that's the best way to find us.
Brilliant. Thanks again for coming on the show. Thanks, Sweyn, for all the background stuff and the co-presentation. We hope everybody has a great week. Have a great week, everybody. Bye.